I'm Ashley McConnell, Public Affairs Officer with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm here with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service botanist Todd Lemein, who has some exciting news in the world of endangered species conservation to share with our viewers in California today. Todd, can you tell me what we're celebrating?
Sure. Thank you, Ashley. I'm really happy to announce that we are delisting the San Benito evening primrose, Camisonia benitensis. This is a small yellow flower that you can see behind me that grows on alluvial terraces in a habitat type called the geologic transition zone, primarily on BLM land.
So it's certainly a great day when we can say that a species no longer needs the protection of the Endangered Species Act. What can you tell me about this particular plant? What makes it unique?
So the species grows in two fairly distinct habitat types. The alluvial terrace habitat type is a generally very flat area near associated with a river. And so it's a terrace above a river and generally has some component of nutrient poor soils. And the other habitat type, the geologic transition zone, occurs on upland slopes above terraces and has, again, nutrient poor soils that are largely serpentine derived.
So it does sound like this plant occupies quite a bit of a Goldilocks niche. Can you tell me a little bit why this plant was doing so poorly and now why it's doing better?
Sure. So the species at time of listing, which was in the late 80s, was only known from very few occurrences in the alluvial terrace areas. And in those areas, it was subject to threats, including off-highway vehicle use, mining, and recreational activities. And the populations that did exist, weren't doing so great. So when the species was listed, there was a big effort to figure out more specifics of the habitat needs of the species. Things such as where does it occur? What are the specific soil and associated plant community requirements, as well as how long do the seeds last for? And are they easily germinable? Is the natural erosion high or low? Like what does the species need? And what the studies found was that the species needs a very specific amount of disturbance. So if you have too much disturbance, you have too much erosion and the plant either dies after germinating or the soil seed bank is lost to erosion. At the other end, if you don't have enough disturbance, you get too much competition from competing perennial or invasive species. And so this niche that it occupies is really one of a specific level of disturbance intensity and disturbance frequency. We also learned that the seed bank is fairly long-lived, and that the biggest thing maybe for the recovery of the species was that it occurs in a whole new habitat type than was known at listing, which is the geologic transition zone. And that was only found out in about 2010. And so at that time, when the BLM botanists identified this habitat type, it opened up a whole new area to explore to see if this plant was occurring there. And then each year since 2010, more and more occurrences of the species has been found.
Wow, so it sounds like the Endangered Species Act was really able to bring a lot of resources and attention to this species so that we could really know more about what it needs and where it lives. So what's next for San Benito evening primrose? How do we know that it's in the clear for the long haul?
So just because we are delisting the species doesn't mean that we're going to stop paying attention to the species. Um, every year, to understand how the species was doing, we have been tracking a subset of the known populations. And the data that we have over, since about the early 90s suggests that the populations has been stable through 20 years of data collection. So we're not seeing a huge increase in the population, nor are we seeing a decrease. And so that data, taken with the fact that we have many, many more populations that were known at listing or that we even have the ability to monitor because there's so many now, it would just take too much time each year to look at each individual occurrence, we are confident that the species is stable where it does occur and that there is much, much more of it. And so what we're going to do with delisting is that we're going to continue to monitor that. So we're going to continue to look at the threats to the species and to see if they are increasing or decreasing. And we're also going to continue to look at the sites that have been monitored for the past 20 years and will continue to be monitored for a minimum of 5 more years. And if we see something concerning, then monitoring might be extended, but we're not taking our eyes off the plant just because the species is being delisted.
Excellent. So we know that this plant, it's one of hundreds of species in California that are benefiting from or have benefited from ESA protections. What do you want folks to know about the ESA and why it's important?
The ESA allows us to give attention to species that we might not otherwise be giving attention to. And these are species that, through our actions might forever disappear. And we might not have ever known about it unless it had been brought to the attention of the general public. So when a species becomes listed, it gives a greater ability to focus attention towards that species and to protect that species from going extinct forever so that we can continue to, live in a manner that doesn't result in it's either a plant or an animal or us. It's like we just have to change some things and we can live together. It's not a mutually exclusive existence.
That's a beautiful world that I would want to live in. So we know that Fish and Wildlife Service mission is one that we certainly can't achieve alone. And recovering endangered species is an all hands on deck effort. So what would you say to anyone listening today about what they can do to help endangered species, whether it's plants or animals in their area?
I would really strongly encourage everyone to just find time to go outside and try to just learn a little bit, like learn a new species of trees, or even if you can't get out to a national forest or a state park or a national park or something, what are the insects growing on your plants? I really believe that the more you can name things and identify them and see how they interrelate with other things, how the insects interrelate with plants, how the insects relate to birds feeding on them. All those little relationships become so much more rich the more you know about them. And it doesn't take a college degree to know more. It just takes just a little bit of interest and a little bit of time. And every little bit helps, and I think provides a greater understanding and appreciation of the world that we live in.
Mm, every little bit helps. Absolutely. Well, that's really great advice, Todd. Thank you so much for sharing this exciting news with our viewers today. We'll definitely look forward to more conservation success stories later this year. Till next time.
Thank you.